Ladies and gentlemen, this was an historic meeting between a legendary comedian and social and political commentator and, in my view, and likely in your view, one of the greatest presidents we've ever had in the history of this country. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. You will hear Mr. Bill Maher in a second. I want to touch upon a couple of points that, with all due respect to Mr. Maher, need to be addressed. Number one, Bill Maher is going to explain that, hey, the person in the White House is not the person that you see, at the Oval Office. Or no, the person that Bill Maher met is not the person that people see on television. Okay? That comes perhaps as a surprise to wonderful, morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats who have despised President Trump for over 8 years now. I want to touch upon that first point that Mr. Maher is going to make. I think it's absolutely wonderful as a person like you watching who lost lifelong friends because of the sin of voting for President Trump. I don't think Mr. Maher understands that the reason liberals have been frightened or petrified of Trump is not because they truly believe he's going to run for a third term, or they truly believe he's going to be a despot. The Democratic Party, in many ways, has become either a cult or this type of atheistic political religion where people don't go to Thanksgiving dinners because somebody voted for Trump. This is unheard of in American politics. This type of tribalism is the result of Democrats losing political power. It's nothing more than simply a political establishment, the Bush-Cheney-Rumsfeld Republican Party, that have now joined forces with, the Liz Cheney, Harris, Clinton, Biden, Kerry, and modern-day Democratic Party. That's why you have the good Republicans, the never-Trumpers, aligning with the morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats against MAGA, or Make America Great Again, which is the popular vote. Most Americans are, in some way, Make America Great Again. This has never been about this type of allegiance to a political party or to some kind of ideology. This is about one political establishment losing power to a man who was part of Americana. Real estate, hotels, casinos, The Apprentice, television, movies. Donald Trump has been part of Americana since the early 80s, since the Barbara Walters interview. He came in, completely politically annihilated the Bush dynasty and then the Clinton dynasty in the Democratic Party, and took control of American politics. And I say this with all due respect to Bill Maher, who I think will eventually possibly vote for President Trump if the Democrats become even more rabid and even more, if the Democrats implode further. I can see him voting for President Trump. He took the first step into acknowledging that, of course, the second point being, of course, Bill Maher and others know that Trump, the man, the human being, is not the political or the politician that we see on screen. That's the same can be said for President Obama, Biden, and others. Okay? Of course, there are different people. If you're a politician and you're trying to go up against all of American media, a public relations monstrosity that is composed primarily of morally superior, highly educated liberal journalists, well, what do you expect Trump to do? Bill Maher makes the point, and the third point I'll just make before you hear Mr. Maher in a second. Bill Maher makes the point, hey, you know what? He's frightening people, and this is obviously not the person that Democrats despise, and he is a normal, sane person. Democrats have viewed anyone, morally superior liberal journalists have viewed anyone who disagrees with them as either nuts, immoral, or some kind of right-wing, immoral, unjust, terrible human being. There is a herd mentality among Democrats. There's this almost cult-like membership and you will lose friends. Lifelong friends will disown you because of the sin of voting for Trump. You can get shunned or canceled on social media. I don't have Twitter. I don't have X, sorry. I don't have Facebook. I don't have Instagram. I have my YouTube channels. This one in particular, obviously, being the main one. But you will lose your social media networks. You will lose your friendships if you vote Trump and you're surrounded by liberal Democrats, because it's become a cult or an atheistic political religion based on the attainment of political power that is slipping away from them in real time, and definitely in the past 8 years. I think Mr. Maher has not addressed that, perhaps either because he doesn't really see it, or it's too bitter of a pill to swallow. Anyway, hit subscribe. This is an amazing admission, or an amazing acknowledgement by a very courageous man in Bill Maher.
And why can't we get the guy I met to be the public guy? And I'm not saying it's our responsibility to do that. It's not. I'm just reporting exactly what I saw over 2.5 hours. I went into the mine, and that's what's down there. A crazy person doesn't live in the White House. A person who plays a crazy person on TV a lot lives there, which I know is fucked up. It's just not as fucked up as I thought it was.
But Trump doesn't play a crazy person. You can easily say that the wonderful, highly educated, morally superior journalists at the Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, The Atlantic, Mother Jones, The Nation, Daily Beast, who every single day decide who to write hit pieces on, every single day write essentially Democratic Party newsletters trying desperately to promote one political side over another. There's not one Make America Great Again Trump supporter at the Washington Post, New York Times, or any publication that I mentioned, and major newspapers around the country, yet Trump won the popular vote. So the act or the performance that Trump is embodying as a politician is a one-man public relations machine going up against an entire public relations machine for the Democratic Party called American media. Trump doesn't have the luxury of Biden telling Charlemagne the God, you ain't who you are. I'm just trying to be respectful here. You ain't who you are if you don't vote for me. Immediately, the Washington Post wrote an article. And then we're not even talking about the fact that Trump was never, there wasn't a shred of evidence to accuse Trump of being a Kremlin operative. Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party literally purchased a Steele dossier. And I love Bill Maher, but I don't think he's ever acknowledged that.
And I have no illusions now that I'm back to work at my job that he might start a new list. Because I don't have a good feeling and will be critical about a lot of what he's doing. The trade war and disappearing people, ruling by decree, threatening judges, gutting the government with glee.
Nobody was disappeared, though. People did not have either documentation or were behaving in a manner that did not correspond with a student visa. Any country following the rule of law or laws that were passed by, in this case, Congress, would do the same thing. These are existing immigration laws that are enforced now by President Trump. But let's continue.
But I also think he now understands I have a job to do, or at least he did on this night, because he said to me early on that he'd seen our last episode, which was the Friday before this dinner. And he said, I thought maybe you'd be nice, but you hit me really hard. I did, because I'm not going to pull my punches that presidents get to propose a third term for themselves. He understood that, and without animus.
Again, I think Mr. Maher knows that he's probably not serious about that. But if there was a legal way, it could possibly take place. But I don't think President Trump was serious about that.
That doesn't mean he's not going to try to do it. At one point, I said to him, you're scaring people. Do you really want to be scaring your own citizens so much?
And I love Bill Maher for doing all of this, but with all due respect, Mr. Maher has to know No, none of the liberal Democrats are actually frightened. None of the liberal Democrats who despise Trump or progressives or left-leaning voters or people or leftists or whatever, nobody left of center, nobody voting Democrat, nobody voting Harris is actually frightened of President Trump. They're angry he took political power away from them. That's it. It's not about his words or his behavior or his demeanor, his whether he's presidential or whether he was a Kremlin operative, which was made up by Clinton and the Democratic Party and deceitful, disgraced intel officials. It wasn't about whether he tried to foment a rebellion, which he didn't. It wasn't about any of the things that they went after Trump. It wasn't even about the accusations against him, because Biden had an accusation against him and it was covered up by media in the most deceitful manner. Nobody was ever frightened of Trump. No Democrat was ever frightened of Trump. Every Democrat or every liberal or everyone left of center who despised Trump, even the never-Trumpers as well, despised truly the fact that he took political power away from them. Trump ripped political power away from Democrats. That's why Democrats disown friends and family. That's why they set up and framed Trump. That's why there was this nonstop 24/7 apoplectic hysteria in media. It was about the attainment of political power, not about being frightened. And I say this with all due respect to Mr. Maher.
And I know now you're all saying, and what did he say to that? Honestly, I don't remember. But it wasn't, okay, I'll stop. So MAGA fans, don't worry. Your boy gave me nothing. Just hats. Hats and a very generous amount of time and a willingness to listen and accept me as a possible friend, even though I'm not MAGA, which was the point of the dinner.
And that is the difference between a Make America Great Again MAGA Trump Republican and a liberal Democrat. I have no problem at all being surrounded by liberal Democrats, having friends who are Democrats or leftists. I have no problem at all. It is the Democratic Party loyalist or the liberal or the morally superior leftist or the progressive that cannot be seen, cannot have a friend, cannot associate with a Trump Republican or even a Republican. And that is what makes left of center a somewhat of a cult or an atheistic political religion. Love Bill Maher. I think that he could possibly vote for President Trump in the future, depending on how further the Democratic Party goes into the abyss of political history. Give me your thoughts. Hit subscribe. Thank you so much.